around people who I want to be around, and
That's how I am, like around my dad, there's certain, like, safe people.
All right, we're streaming, just so you'll know.
uh,
I mean, I don't care, y'all keep talking, I just don't want you to know, I don't want you to say anything that'll incriminate yourself. If you robbed a bank, I don't want you to tell it, okay? So I'm trying to, we're seeing if we can get, no, that's not it. We're seeing if we can get the scriptures online from my phone, so let's see if this works. Nope, it's not working. So we'll just,
how are you trying to do it?
just from my phone, you can come look at it.
You know, the drop-down menu? Or is your Wi-Fi on? This is all things Lydia's told me, because I didn't know how to make this stuff work.
Yes, we need those young people to help us.
Yeah, watch this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Lydia told me that.
I know that from the TV at home, but I don't do it enough to remember it.
Well, it should come up, it just,
It says it's spinning.
Okay. I couldn't figure it out on my phone at home, and she was like, just give me your phone.
It's just spinning. We won't worry about it. And I know Shannon got it hooked up last night on the, but if you want to sit and see if you, it's up. I just don't know how to, all you do is hit on air, and I hit on air and it didn't come up here, so I don't know.
The TV.
Unable to connect to fellowship hall, so I'm not gonna worry about it. But you can look on that and see if you can figure it out. All right, so,
Let's see if you can do it now.
so today we're talking about dare to look ahead. And what we're looking ahead is at the believer's future. And so I thought, a lot of times I do stuff out of necessity on negative stuff. And I think when we hear about the end times, all we hear is negative, right? There's this grand future that we've got. And you want me to try it again on
Shannon,
this?
see if it'll work now.
Let's see.
Maybe the TV was just asleep. I looked at the computer screen, but that's above my pay grade.
If you look on there, it says on air, and you click on air.
Somewhere on here, right?
Let's see. Okay, so
It's a video
I
capture.
can't even find the app again.
Hey, how are you? Nice to see you. I was thinking, no one's gonna be here today. Good to see you.
Yeah, I can't get it up on my phone. All right, so
The fireplace.
we all have this innate desire to know where we came from and to know where we're going, right? And I've known people, children who were tormented many times, and adults that are tormented until that fact is settled in their hearts of where they came from and who they were born to. And I don't know why, but it seems like life is really hard on people who don't have that settled in their hearts and minds of where they came from. And it seems that thought of where we're going doesn't seem to torment people as much as where they came from. And I don't know why that is, but in fact, I'm very concerned with all the time with the aged people, because they seemingly give no thought to tomorrow. And they're just days or years away from, very few short years away from, or months away from death, and they just don't really give it a thought. And so that baffles me, quite honestly. And but for the believer, this is, I believe, on the forefront of every believer's mind. So what awaits? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to examine a lot of scriptures, and we're going to get our precise timeline down for what our future holds. And hopefully we can get them on the screen. If not, oh well. But listen, I am not techie. I don't like it. I'm not working actively anymore in a job other than the church, and I just don't have an interest in this stuff. So if anybody is techie and wants to help us, please come and help us, because we need help. And I just don't have an interest in it, and I don't have time to focus on that and learn the computer and learn the Bible. I can only do one. And so that's just the bottom line. Robbie's now to the point where he gives me and Jeff a hard time. Y'all are pathetic. Yeah, well, You know what? I don't care because I really just don't have time to know. Now, when I worked, I spent more time on it because I had to. You know, but now I'm not working at a regular job, so it just doesn't matter to me. So anyway, putting that out there, somebody to help us. So anyway, so today we're going to examine these scriptures. I want to get our precise timeline down for what our future holds. Because, and listen, we may not see it, we may not live to see it play out. I don't know. But I think it's sure looking like we are. But if we don't, that's okay. But because guess what? It's going to give us a positive mindset. It's going to give us something to look forward to. It's going to give us a hopeful future. You know, even if we don't live to see it play out. But either way, I think it's nice for us to know. So you see that the Thessalonians were persecuted believers in Paul's day, and that's the book of Thessalonians that Paul wrote. It was a letter that he wrote to the Thessalonians. And the Thessalonians were actually inhabitants of significant cities in ancient Macedonia, which is in modern day Greece. And they received not one, but 2 letters from the Apostle Paul. And Paul did travel there, and that I thought, wow, that might be a great study. I remember the children's church teacher did that with James and Robbie years ago when they were kids, in Paul's journeys, which I've never studied that. Paul's travels, and so maybe I should do that one day. But the Thessalonians' eschatology wasn't quite right, and Paul found that out, and that's why he wrote these letters, to correct their thinking, and so they were mixed up, and they were confused. And they life was tough, and they were being persecuted. The Christians there were being persecuted. And so Paul was writing this letter to them to give them hope and to give them encouragement and tell them what they had to look forward to, because some of their loved ones had been martyred. And so that's what the book of 1st and 2nd Thessalonians is about. But you see, Christianity had caused a real stir at this time, and there were a lot of people who were turning to Jesus. And see, this was upsetting the Jews. And so the Jews were actually starting riots. They were actually accosting people. They were, we see in the word where they accosted Jason, who was the homeowner that Paul stayed with. He and his companions had stayed with, and they had escaped. And so Paul was only there just a few weeks because it was too volatile a place and he couldn't stay. And so we got a lot going on here, and then they got these drastic conversions, and so we can even begin to imagine, or we can't even begin to imagine losing our lives, right, over what we believe. Or can you really imagine being a Jew and being abducted and all that? I listened to a interview this morning of one of the girls who was abducted on October 7th, and she was one of the first ones released, and it's a very good interview with her. Can we imagine somebody coming taking us out of our homes and starving us to death, or raping and killing us? I mean, no. But you know, typically today we don't have to worry about that too much here. But see, Paul gives us great insight and explanation through his explanation to the Thessalonians about the truth. And it's the only truth. See, that's something you'll hear today. Oh, well, you know, what's your truth? No, there is only one truth, and it's with a capital T, and that's with Jesus. So, in fact, and this is where we find the revelation of the rapture, the snatching away. And I hate all this talk about Darby. You know, that Darby's the one who started, you know, no, it's right there in Thessalonians. Darby got it because he read Thessalonians, and he was the first one that really capitalized on it and talked about it and wrote about it because we had been in the Dark Ages, and the Bible had really been hidden from us. And so when Darby got a hold of it, he was excited. Oh my gosh, you know, we're going to go in a rapture. And so he might have been the one that called it the rapture, but it was the catching of the way. Somebody's at the door. So this is where we find this truth with a capital T of this glorious future that the Holy Spirit made known to Paul. And in fact, he tells us not to grieve like the world grieves, even though they had been martyred, some of them. Their families had been martyred, and he's telling them don't grieve. So it'd be like us telling the Jews today that their loved ones were martyred on October 7th. No, don't grieve like the world does. You have hope, you know, to try to put it in some perspective. So when I was thinking about this reminded me of King David when he had sinned with Bathsheba, and she had had a baby because of that sin. And the baby, it was because of the sin, but the baby died. And David fasted and wept and prayed, and you know the story while the baby was alive, saying that while the baby was alive, he had hope that God would have mercy on him and let the baby live. But when the baby died, then David said he stopped weeping and fasting, and he focused his attention not on what was, not on what had been, but on what would be. Remember what he said? He said after the baby died that he was going to focus on going to the child, not on the child being dead. Can you imagine? That's how every one of us should be if we have a loved one die. We should be focused on not what was, not on how we're feeling, but on we are going to that person. And I thought, my gosh, how insightful. He knew that child could not come back. And he knew, though, that one day that he was going to go to the child. And so this is so exciting, and I think this is what Paul is trying to tell the Thessalonians. My gosh, you've got a glorious, hopeful future. Don't get all bogged down in grief, but look forward, and I'm going to tell you what's coming. That's what Paul's saying. I'm going to tell you what you got to look forward to. So in light of eternity, the fact that David had to wait a very short time before he himself entered eternity is very telling. So this is exactly what Paul is telling these believers at Thessalonica. So see, all our lives, this is how we are. We work towards a future, right? So we go to preschool, we get that achieved, and then we look forward to kindergarten, and then we get kindergarten achieved, and then we look forward to going to elementary school, go to the first grade, and then once you complete that, then you're looking forward to middle school, and then once you get done with middle school, you look forward to high school, and then once you get through high school, you're looking forward to going to college, or maybe getting married, or maybe going to technical school, or maybe joining the military. But see, each day you're getting closer to the kingdom coming. And that is something that came to light to me as I studied this, was that my future is the kingdom. And I've never really thought of it in those terms. And I say my whole life I've read the Bible. And my whole life, I've tried to figure all this stuff out. And I never really realized until just studying this that the whole Bible, and I mean the whole Bible, is all about the kingdom coming. It's not even about going to heaven. It's about the kingdom that is going to come, which we're going to talk more about. So isn't this this is what Jesus was trying to tell us in the Lord's Prayer. Pray, thy kingdom come. That's the whole goal. And I think in my mind, I've always had my whole goal is going to heaven, but that's not the goal. The whole goal is to live in the kingdom, live in the new kingdom that's coming. So there's always a future in view, isn't there? Just like with my example of school. I mean, you always have something you're working towards, you're looking forward to. Even if you're retired, you got something you're working towards, you're looking forward to. I mean, life is just, what are we going to do tomorrow, right? And so I thought it sort of reminds me of chasing a carrot, somebody pulling a carrot right on a string and chasing it. See, but until our last breath is breathed out, see, our future forever lurks in the shadows, beckoning us to come. Your future is calling you every day, and you're going to follow it, right? Because what's the alternative? And so David said, I was young and now I'm old. And so a life of faith beckons us all our lives to come. So we come to the end of the rainbow, if you will, a rainbow that spills out into glory. Isn't that what's at the end of the rainbow? A pot of gold? So our rainbow, our spiritual rainbow, spills out into a pot of glory into the new kingdom. And I'm telling you what, we have such a bright future awaiting us that I got so excited studying this. But with this said, I do want to address the young people, because young people, well, I can't think about that. I got to think about right now. I got to think about school. I got to think about what I'm going to do. Sure you do. But see, you can do it all at the same time. And of course you need goals. Everybody needs goals. Old people need goals. They need a goal that I'm going to get up in the morning, okay? And see, you can pursue your goals now and still have a glorious future in your mind. And knowing what you're going to do today, did you realize, young people, that what you do today may very well affect your glory future? And to the point that you may even be utilizing your gifts and talents, what your gift and talent is here on the earth, that you may very well be using that gift and talent there in the heavenly kingdom. So I don't want us to separate our now future with our glory future, because really it's all tied together and it's all working towards the same goal, like going to college to get a job. See, your now future is I'm going to college, but my future is to get a job. Okay, or like going to boot camp to become a team member in the military, working for the good of the United States. See, you're always working towards a future. So today, with this in mind, I want us to understand the timeline of our future, the future of believers, the future of disciples of Christ, the future of the born again, the washed in the blood saints of Almighty God, whom He created to know Him. See, I think we lose sight of that God loves us. He created us to know Him, to fellowship with Him, to be with Him, to be in the new kingdom with Him. And we hear a lot about, like I said, about the bad that's to come, the tribulation, Armageddon, hell, all that. But really, that doesn't concern us. So I'm not saying don't study it. But what I am saying is I've decided I'm not going to focus on that. You know why? Because it doesn't concern me, because I'm not going to be here. You know, and so today I want us to focus on our good and glorious future to come. So, you know, the Bible is very much like a jigsaw puzzle. I say that all the time. But it's many people trying to put all these pieces together. And the thing is, none of us have the top of the box. And it's honestly quite hard to do, okay, because I've tried all my life to make it work. But guess what? That's what the Holy Spirit's for. And He comes and He says, okay, you put that. He still won't give you the top of the box, but he'll say, okay, put this piece here and put this piece there, and then all of a sudden, then things start coming together, and then your future that was one time vague and unknown, it starts coming together, and you start seeing things, and you start understanding things, and you start getting excited about things, and then your future starts becoming very exciting. So who's ever heard or seen the movie about the Jewish wedding? I meant to watch it before this, and I didn't get a chance. But it hadn't been too many years ago that I saw this movie for the first time. And if you haven't seen it, it's called Before the Wrath. And it has Kevin Sorbo in it. And I wanted to watch it again, but... and then I forgot about it, so now this reminds me to go home and watch it. So it's a real eye-opener movie. And it's a real eye-opener to the Bible and to our future. And but why would the movie makers make a movie about a Jewish wedding and then call it Before the Wrath? That doesn't just seem to jive, does it? So that's an interesting title, I think. Well, we're going to see why. But Before the Wrath. Okay, not the wrath, but before the wrath. So with that said, I really think that understanding the Jewish wedding is a must. And as I studied the Jewish wedding, I was amazed at how prophecy began to come together in my mind. And wasn't Jesus so good, the way He gave us all these stories and parables? Listen, I'm slow, and I need help. And these stories bring it together for me, and they make me see it in a different way than just facts and figures. I am not a facts and figures person. You know, some people love facts and figures, and I need some more something. I need some more oomph to make those facts and figures come alive, right? Mm-hmm. And these parables do that. So Jesus Himself told this story, and it was in John chapter 14, verses 1 through 3, and I'm going to read it. And He said, "Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. And whither I go, ye know, and the way ye know. So I remember the first time I heard this scripture interpreted in a different way, and I was at one of my parents' best friends' funeral, and the preacher there translated mansions into rooms. And I remember, that's the first time I'd ever heard that. I was incensed. I was so mad. I came home and that preacher said blah, 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 blah. And of course, we read the King James, so I hadn't read that. And so I was just so upset. So when I read this again, it got me thinking about that. And so I looked it up to see, okay, what is really going on here, right? And what is this mansions or rooms or whatever, you know? So it's talking about heaven, obviously. And he's talking about, Jesus is saying, this is where the Father lives. Okay, and there are many mansions, or there are many dwellings there. All right, so I looked up the Greek word for mansions, and this is the only time that it occurs in John 14:23, and it's rendered abode. So a mansion, abode, and so let's read it again. And I want to instead of reading mansion, I want to read it abode. So in my Father's house, meaning in heaven, there are many abodes. See, I think that's a better rendition than rooms, because he's talking about all of heaven, and so that doesn't make sense. And in all of heaven, there are many rooms. All right, so where it says there are many mansions, the word mansions means either the act of dwelling in a place, which we will make our abode with him, or it means the place where one dwells. So it says it's taken from the verb to remain and signifies the place where one dwells or remains. It is applied by the Greek writers to the tents or temporary habitations which soldiers pitch in their marches. Now that's very interesting. It's a temporary abode. Have you ever thought about that?
No, because heaven's eternal.
Nope. It is and it isn't, but we're going to get to that, because that's what really, I mean, I hadn't thought about that either until I started, and all this just started unfolding as, and don't you love to study the Word? Because it's just one thing leads you to, and yeah, you go down all these rabbit trails, but oh my gosh, what you learn is incredible. I learned all this just from this one scripture. Okay, so I want us to pay attention to this important details, that it denotes a dwelling, and this is what they said that Greek word means, of less permanency than the word house. Had it said a house, then that would have been more permanent. And of course, we're talking about the Greek word. Okay, so the Greek word means a less permanent location, a less permanent dwelling. Now that's very interesting, because the word in Greek for mansions means abode, which denotes a dwelling of less permanency than the word house. Less permanency, if I type that right. And so the reason is because, yes, we are going to the Father's house if we go by death. But if we live to see the rapture, we're not going. We're going to go, but for a very short time. Okay, and that's what we're going to really talk about. And so we're going to go there for a very short time. It's not going to be permanent. Now don't get afraid, because this is really going to get exciting. Okay, all right. But we have to set this foundation to figure out where we are going. All right. So it's commonly understood as affirming that heaven, that in heaven there's ample room to receive all who come, right? Okay. And that therefore the disciples might be sure that they would not be excluded. That's what Jesus was saying. He's saying, don't worry, disciples, There's lots of mansions, there's lots of rooms, there's lots of abode, there's lots of dwellings in my Father's house, in heaven. There's a lot of places for you to go. So that's what he was saying to him. Don't worry. All right. So this is important, though, when it comes to the Jewish wedding tradition. And I never really read this verse in connection with the Jewish wedding, but this is what Jesus is talking about. And so this verse is linked, that Jesus spoke to the disciples, is linked to that wedding tradition. So in the first century Judea, during Jesus' day, a man would pick a bride and he would pay a great price for her. He would have to pay a dowry for her that he had to pay to her father. And he would offer the father this dowry, and if he accepted the dowry, then great, and then of course the woman had to accept, and then the son would go back to his father's house and on the property, and he would either build a room onto the property, onto the house, onto his father's house to bring his bride back, or if there's enough room on the property, he might build another house, just like the Amish do today. They do the exact same thing today.
A lot of Middle Eastern places, they have family compounds.
Okay, family
They don't
compounds.
have, this is the one dwelling, and then like around the courtyard, all the
Right,
family
I love
have
that.
their own
I
dwelling.
love that. I'd give anything if we could
A
do
lot of
that.
African
Yeah.
places, they
That's
do
so
that.
awesome. So when the dwelling was completed, and if anyone has ever built a house, do you not have a goal, a completion goal? Of course you do. You have a time set that you hope to be completed. But how many times do you ever meet that goal?
Builders are notorious.
I would say never. I would say never. I would say it's just about as big as winning the lottery. You know, if you actually met that goal. And why? Well, there's a whole lot involved. You got tons of people involved. And then even if a house is completed, then you got to wait on the inspector. Okay, because here, I don't know about everywhere, but at least in Georgia, you have to have everything inspected, and you cannot close on the house until that inspector comes. So you may be waiting, you know, for days, even weeks, before that inspector can get around to you, depending on how many there are and how busy they are. So with this in mind, so the son, you know, that's why we don't know when the son is going to be able to go get the bride, because we don't know how long it's going to take to build the house. But when it is ready, then guess who would announce the bridegroom coming? Well, the groomsman. Okay, a groomsman. And as we're going through this, think about a wedding that we go to today. Who walks up first? The groomsman. Okay, so when you see that groomsman start walking down that aisle, what do you know? Oh, the wedding's about to start. And then who comes next? You always know the groomsman is going to come out first, right? So the groomsman comes out first, and then when you see that groomsman, who do you know is going to come next? The bride. Right? The bride. And the groom. I'm calling him the groomsman. I'm talking about the groom himself. So we have the groomsman, and then he's when you see him, you know the groom is coming. Then when you see the groom coming, you know the bride is coming, right? And and then what he does when he comes is he sweeps her off her feet. Now this is in the Jewish wedding. He sweeps her off her feet, and he puts her on some type of litter, okay, and to take her back to the father's house. And I'm talking about a litter that an old-timey man-powered transport, okay, they would carry her like on a throne, and it was like a portable bed or couch. It was mounted on two poles, and it was carried on the shoulders of men. And so she would be taken back, probably his friends, the groomsmen would probably be the ones carrying her. And she would be taken back to where her husband is with the father at the father's house, and where he had painstakingly prepared this dwelling for her. And then after the official ceremony, the bride and the groom would enter into their new dwelling, where they would stay for 7 days. Now, isn't that interesting? They would stay there for 7 days, and then at the end of the 7 days, they would emerge to their new life together. Now, I'm getting excited talking about this, because now my mind goes to this double meaning, okay? Because I'm seeing this in a whole different light, and it's so exciting. So Jesus, in this verse in John 4:2-3, see, he's talking about this traditional wedding that they all would have known about. So I want to read it another time, but this time I'm going to insert some key facts into the commentary. So it says, in my Father's house, in heaven, are many mansions, or temporary dwellings in heaven. And if it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you as the bridegroom. And if I go and prepare a place for you, my bride, in my Father's house, I will come again. But I'm not sure of the exact time. But at that time I will receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. So you will be with me forevermore. And whither I go, ye know, and the way ye know, you know that I'm going to the Father, and you know the way is through me. Man, does that start taking on a lot of light? Well, as you probably know, there is much reference in the Bible of the man and the woman and between the marriage of Jesus and the church. And I think this is one reason that Satan is always messing with the genders. Okay, because, and he always has. This isn't anything new, because this transgender myth is not new. It's been going on since ancient times. But for you men, you really manly men, okay, and I hope all the men listening are manly men. We don't want you to be, you know, I'm not going to say the word. Anyway, we're, okay, but if you're totally freaked out, okay, by this marriage scenario to Jesus, okay, I want to give you another way to think about it, all right? And because I do know that it unnerves some men, and they just can't get their heads around marrying Jesus, okay? And especially after our Biden fiasco and all this liberal nonsense we're going through, have been going through. But really, this example is the most glorious, intimate love that Jesus was intimating here between Christ and those who love him and those whom he loves. But you've heard me before compare Christ's love for the church and for the believer to, say, a love that a soldier has for his commander, or the love of a soldier has for his comrades, and so that's why I'm going to give you men another way to think about it. Okay, if it totally freaks you out. All right, but still we want to pay attention to this example that Jesus used. And I'm just telling you, men, don't allow your masculinity to rob you of this beautiful metaphor, because that's what it is. It's a metaphor. All right, so with this understanding, Jesus is telling the believers, his disciples, that he's going to go away. He's going back to heaven. He's going back to the Father's house, where he himself will prepare a grand place for his bride, the church, the believer. And then when it's ready, which is a predetermined time, then the Father will tell the Son to go get his bride. And guess who his bride is? It's us. Yeah. All right? And it's not all believers of all ages. It's only the believers of the church age, which I'll tell you more about in a minute. So the bride is all believers since Calvary. If you were born after Calvary, then you are the bride of Christ. Mm-hmm. Not the believers before Calvary, and not the believers in the tribulation that come through the tribulation, so or are martyred during the tribulation. So the bride is the church, okay, and the church came into being on the day of Pentecost, and so the bride is male and female believers. All right, from all over the world. And yes, God has his people who love Jesus all over the world. So now this really starts getting exciting when you grasp this truth. Because why does the bride and groom stay in their house for 7 days? Okay, sure, they're on a honeymoon. Where do we get the honeymoon from? This is where we get the honeymoon. Because they stay in their dwelling for 7 days. And so it's their honeymoon of sorts. Because it too has a deep meaning. All of this stuff has such deep meaning. So the meaning is that for the 7 years of the tribulation, the bride, the believer, is safe in the Father's house.
That's really good.
She's safe with her husband. Soldiers, you're safe with your commander. However you want to think about it. Oh my gosh, this is so good. So why? Because now she's one with Christ. What happens on your honeymoon, and if you did it the right way and you consummate the marriage on your honeymoon, you're now one with your beloved, right? Now during this 7-day period, we are safe, one with our heavenly Savior, our groom, our Jesus. And so the bride, listen, is not appointed to the Father's wrath.
Yes.
Okay? And what groom and his father want to beat up the bride? All right? Or even punish her. And so think about this. Did your husband, or Tim, did your wife beat you up on your wedding night? I mean, that's kind of preposterous, right? And to think about that your father or your father-in-law wants to beat you up on your wedding night? It's preposterous, or that your bride wants to beat you up, or your groom wants to beat you up. See, but what is the tribulation? The tribulation is God's anger and His wrath poured out on an unrepentant world, but not on the bride. The bride does not get beat up. Boy, now listen. I just won't pay one bit of attention to anybody who tries to tell me that we're going through the tribulation, because that's just pure nonsense. And right here it proves it. And so I'm not going to debate those people, because I'm not good at debate anyway, but I'm not going to give them one iota of my time, okay? And I'm certainly not going to listen to anything that they teach. Because if they think that the bride is going to be beat up, then they absolutely do not understand what Jesus did at the cross. And so this really starts making sense about the tribulation, and that we are not appointed to the wrath, and giving us understanding of Paul's words to the Thessalonians, because see, for 7 days they stay secluded in the marriage chamber in their new home, getting to know each other. So during the 7-year tribulation, the bride and the groom, Jesus and us, we stay secluded in heaven while the wrath of the Father is going on the earth. All right, so now at the end of the 7 days, or at the end of the 7 years, and you could say that's the law of double reference. Now, I've heard Jeff talk about those laws of interpretation till the cows come home, right? Well, I've read them, but I'll be honest with you, I never really comprehended them. I'm going to take my sword off, I'm getting hot. And I got them last night, and I'm going to study those things, okay? Because I really want to make sure that my theology is right, and that I'm not breaking any of those laws of interpretation. So I just threw that in there to say, let's all study those and make sure that we're understanding. And this is a law of double reference out here, where you see things referenced, 2 different times. And so we see it referenced as 7 days or 7 years. So after the tribulation, we, the church, His bride, guess what? We leave our temporary abode. It's not permanent. We leave that temporary abode, we leave the Father's house, and we come back to earth with our husband, Jesus Christ, and there we begin a whole new life in Him. That's why the Greek word was temporary. That's why it was a tent. It wasn't permanent, because you're only there for a little while, because that is not your end goal. Your end goal is the new kingdom. I know, I'm like, Barbara's like, oh, give me a V8 moment. I mean, I had a V8 moment when I read this. Or when I was studying this out and everything, and all this started coming together, I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed this the whole time, And so, and I think the reason is because we focus on the negative. We focus on what's going to happen to the unbeliever. I've never focused really just on what's going to happen to the believer. I'm always focusing on what the bad parts of the tribulation are. I've never really thought about just the good parts. And then when I started studying this and the Lord started taking me down the good parts, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never seen it like this before. So we leave the Father's house after the 7 days tribulation, after the 7 days in our honeymoon, and then we come back to earth to begin a new life with Him. And see, he has poured out his wrath, the wrath of the Lamb, in the battle of Armageddon to defeat all of Christ's enemies. And then after, we're going to discuss in detail how he's going to rule and reign in this new kingdom. Thy kingdom come. That's the whole goal, is thy kingdom come, not getting to heaven. The whole Bible is about thy kingdom coming. All right? And so we're going to come out into this glorious new earth with our husband reigning as king. Not just some bozo we married. We married a king. The king of kings. And so man, I hope this is starting to excite you, even for the men, because and that you're not getting hung up on this bride reference. Because think about it in relation to the victory of battle. Okay, you've been through this battle called life, and now you emerge into a new kingdom that you have won with your fellow soldiers, and you're following your great commander. I don't know what it is, but Ronald Reagan's from Dixon, Illinois, right where Jeff's from. His boyhood home is right there. I've been to that house countless times. Okay, we've taken people, there over the years and everything, and I cannot, every time, I say, I'm not going to cry, I'm not going to cry, I'm not going to cry. I walk in that door and I cry. I don't know what it is. And I know, Ronald Reagan wasn't the best, but you know what? He was my commander. And I don't know what it is. But there's something weird there that I cannot help but cry every time I walk in that house. Okay? And so I understand this analogy between, and I've never been to war. We weren't in a war when I was in, but still, you got that camaraderie. You know what you're there for. You know, you're there to serve the U.S. You're there for your, fellow, in our situation, sailors. And it just does something to you.
Yes.
And so I understand this, that he was my commander, and believe me, I had some that I wouldn't follow to the bathroom. Okay, much less follow to, war or something, but they were horrible. But then you had some that you loved because they exuded respect, and you just love them. You appreciate them. You want to follow them. You'll follow them to the ends of the earth because you love them. So I understand all that. And anyway, but see, for 2,000 years, God has been preparing a place for his bride. And he's been in his Father's house preparing this dwelling place, this temporary dwelling place for his bride. And soon he's going to send his groomsmen to sound the trumpet, announcing his spontaneous arrival.
You talked about the father says, go now and meet your bride. I understood that at the weddings, the father would have to approve the son's building of this new dwelling. And so then he would say, okay, son, now you can go get your bride.
Isn't that awesome? Is that not awesome?
Wow. Yeah,
This is so exciting. So when the bridegroom comes, this event is called the rapture. Okay, now that word is not in the Bible, but it says the catching away of the saints. Okay, so I don't know if rapture is Greek or what. I didn't look that up. But what he does, but think about this. This is so exciting. He comes, and what does he do? He sweeps his bride up into the air. Okay, where the Jewish bride, he swept her up and put her on a litter to be carried on the shoulders of his friends. We're swept up into the air on a litter of air, okay, and a litter of wind. And then remember how in that event the bride becomes one with her husband, and we're taken up on Christ's litter to heaven to be one with him. And then guess what we get when we get there? We get a new body. We don't just get a house; we get a new body. All right, and so we're going to get a body suitable for heaven. But so what about the dead in Christ? Well, what about them? What about those people before the crucifixion? What about the dead that are going to die during the tribulation? Well, that's very interesting. I'm so glad you asked. Okay, so what if Because I said at the beginning, you know, we may live to see the rapture, we may not. I think we will. But what if we don't? Well, what about us? Okay, well, don't worry, because there's great provision made for those that have already gone to sleep in Jesus. So if you do die before the rapture, and there's great provision made for those prior to the crucifixion, and there's great provision made for those that died during the tribulation period. And so what I want us to see is that Jesus said that they only sleep. You know that. Okay, he always says they sleep. All right, well, why did he say that? He wasn't meaning soul sleep. See, some people read that and think he means soul sleep. No, he meant that their bodies are asleep. And they're waiting a new body. Their spirit went on, but their body was asleep. And they're waiting their new body because this body is not fit for heaven. This body cannot function in heaven. So we have to get a new body that is fit for heaven. So back to Paul explaining these truths to the people in Thessalonica. In 1 Thessalonians 4:14. This is very important for all of us to understand. 1 Thessalonians 4:14. Paul is saying that those who have died during the church age, which we are in, the church age, since the day of Pentecost, we've been in the church age, so that's the day we're in now. Paul says that they too, that those who died in Christ will hear the call of the bridegroom, and they will hear the trumpet, and their bodies will come out of the grave, and they will be quickened, and they will be made suitable to live in heaven. And not just that, but the new heaven and the new earth. So if I die before the rapture, Paul says that don't y'all worry. Okay, I don't want none of y'all worried about me. I am perfectly fine. My body's asleep, but my soul's gone on. But when y'all go in the rapture, don't worry, because I'm coming too, because my body's coming out. And I'm going to get a new body. I'm going to get a new glorified body that I'm going to be able to go to heaven with you in. So that's the provision that's made for them. Is that not cool? I mean, he covers everybody. All right, and so I'm telling you what, I read my Bible wrong for so many years, and I read it in judgment. I read it in judgment. I was taught judgment. I don't know where I got it, but I read it and believed it and thought it in judgment, that God was waiting to clobber me over the head. And I was condemned by my own sin nature. See, I didn't read it properly. I didn't understand the entire plan of God, that his whole plan was to save me and to restore me into a pre-sin state. I didn't understand that. And he is wanting to take me as his bride. How much different my life would have been if I had realized this. And if I had realized that there's going to be a new kingdom that he wants me to go with him to. Yeah. And so, see, the entire Bible is stories of those who love God, who love Jesus, who side with him, who are saved. And then there's stories of those who hate him. I never hated him. But see, I couldn't make that distinction in my mind. I never could figure it out. And yes, there are people who hate him. They want to go their own way. They want to be separated from him. See, that's mind-boggling. Yeah. Okay, for us believers, I mean, I can't even imagine it. I really have a hard time getting my head around it. But right here, in this wedding allegory, is all these truths exemplified. He wants me. He loves me. He's preparing a place for me. His Father wants me. I don't have to worry about being kidnapped or beat up when I get there. They're not going to clobber me over the head because I wasn't perfect. So yes, see, and this is something we all need to understand, because unbelievers are going to spout this to you. Okay, well, what about babies dying and people in October 7th and people, well, what kind of God is that? You know what kind of God that is? A God that gave us free will. And here's the key. This is the whole dividing line of that issue. we suffer persecution at the hands of man. Because man has a free will and man can do whatever he wants. God made us that way, in his image, that we have a free will. We can do that. Okay? But see, the Father is never gonna beat up his bride. So it's not God who's killing babies. That's man who's killing babies. And we need to understand that difference. And so the Bible tells us, yes, you're going to be persecuted by sinful man, but you will never suffer at the hand of God by his wrath if you are his bride. And how do you get to be his bride? By simply believing upon him, by asking him to come into your heart, by asking him to be your husband or your commander or whatever you feel comfortable with, however you want to put it. So again, the groom nor his father beat the bride up. No, what he does is say, oh, come on, son, let's get this place built so you can go get that bride. All right? And so he comes and he brings her to him in peace and safety. So like the bride, who doesn't know how long it'll take, right, to build the house. See, we don't know when he's coming. And we don't know, but see, God didn't leave us in the dark. And this is another thing that is just so extraordinary. He gave us all kinds of instructions. He gave us all kinds of timelines. He told us exactly what he was going to do and how it was going to go down. He told us he was going to build a house. He told us where he was going. We know. And he told us about who the contractors were. And he told us what they were going to do. He told us that there was an inspector coming, and he told us about the tough economic times that we were going to live through while the house was being built. He told us how the world was going to affect the building of the house. He told us all this in order to give the bride some idea or some timeline of his coming. So 1 Thessalonians 5:9, man, that's an important verse. 1 Thessalonians 5:9. That is a revelation to Paul straight from Jesus. And it says, for God hath not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Lord Jesus Christ. Mic drop. I'm done. What else do we need to know? So if someone doesn't believe in the rapture, if they don't believe in the pre-tribulation rapture, now I'm not getting this from myself, I'm getting this from Pastor Jeff. He's been telling me this for years, and I'm telling you I'm really slow because I'm just now really like getting what he's saying. We have no business listening to them. And I agree. And it's taken me a while to get to that point because I'm all, they may have something else good to say and I can glean something over here. Yes, that's all true. But if you miss this fact, you miss the whole Bible. And guess how I know? Because I did. I missed it. Missed the whole thing. Missed the whole plan of God. I had the Bible all wrong. I thought I was going to be judged. I couldn't live a successful life for fear of being judged. And do you think that kept me from doing wrong? Heck no, that just made me do all the more wrong. Isn't that what the Bible says? That the law is your school teacher. It shows you how wrong you are? Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, I can't receive from somebody who doesn't believe this because they don't understand the entirety of the gospel. They don't understand why Jesus came in the first place. He came to get his bride. And they don't understand that the entire plan is to take us to the Father's house for safekeeping. And they don't understand this unfathomable love that he has, that he wants us to be by his side throughout the new kingdom age. That's the whole goal, is the new kingdom age. So in this story, we see the perfection of the prophecy of the wedding of the Christ with his church, and the bringing of the bride into the new heaven and the new earth, where he's going to rule and reign for all eternity in external bliss. And don't forget how the bride would have been anxiously looking for her bridegroom to come every day. If you know that you're in love, and you know that you've got this gorgeous man for us women, or you got this great commander coming for you men, you're gonna be looking. You're gonna be, every day, you're gonna be, oh my gosh, maybe today's the day. Are you gonna keep your pajamas on until 2 o'clock? No. Are your hairs gonna be in curlers at 3 o'clock? Okay, you're gonna get up early, you're gonna get up early, man, you're gonna get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, or even before, you're gonna be so excited, you're gonna be, every day, you're gonna be getting ready. Whoa, he might come today, so I gotta be ready, right? And what about the bride? She's gonna have things, she's gonna be doing stuff, she's gonna be making stuff, she's gonna be sewing stuff, she's gonna be preparing stuff to take to her new house. Isn't that what women do? Women make the house a home. Go to any bachelor's house. I've never seen very many that were really, someplace I'd want to live, right? Because they don't know typically how to decorate and stuff. And they typically don't make it a home. That's what the woman does. She makes it a home. So she's going to be preparing stuff. And she's going to be all excited. And she's going to be waiting for him. And what does the Bible say? He's coming for those that are looking. So think about all that the bride goes through in preparation. Oh my gosh, if you've had a wedding. Now, we did not have a wedding. We got married in a Baptist preacher's home, but I'm telling you what, I did 2 weddings for James and Robbie. And you could say I was the wedding coordinator, and I'm telling you what, that was work. Okay, so don't let anybody kid you. It is a lot of work. So guess what? When you're down here waiting, it's work. But guess what? You're waiting with this excitement. You're waiting with anticipation. You're waiting, getting stuff ready. You're waiting, okay, you met a new friend. Oh, I can invite my new friend to the wedding. See, you're not waiting in despair. You're not waiting in sorrow and weeping. No, you're waiting in great anticipation, and you're working hard for him to come. You're doing your best to get ready. So listen to Hebrews 9:28. It says, so Christ once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time. See, he's already asked us to marry him. So if we are looking, he is coming for us the second time without sin unto salvation. Hebrews 9:28. So this is why, young people, you need not live in the now totally. You can still live in the now. You can still be preparing. You can still be excited about your future. You can be excited about your future here on earth. You can be excited about your future in heaven. But you need to look at your future with excitement of the ultimate reality that's coming. And that when he does come, he wants to find you doing well. He wants to find you not in sin. Did we not just read that? He wants to find you looking for him. He wants to find you furthering yourself. He wants to find you making yourself more appealing as the bride by getting out of your pajamas. All right? Can you imagine if he comes, the bridegroom comes and you're in your pajamas? Now, as a bride, I would be, oh my God, I'd be humiliated, right? I mean, that would be horrible. Okay, I mean, is there anything worse than he comes and I'm in my pajamas? Or I've been cleaning house all day and I haven't had a shower. Okay, I mean, it would be terrible. Or for the guys, how about making yourself into a good soldier while you wait? How about making yourself into a good employee? How about making yourself good at whatever you do, knowing that your king is coming? And he is going to find you doing whatever you do. Do you want to have him come and find that you're watching porn at work? See how it applies to now? See, what we do now, he says he's coming to find us without sin. Now, it doesn't mean you're never going to sin again, but it means that you're going to look for him. You're going to strive to do the best you can do while you're here. Or whatever your business is, just know that he could come today. And men, would you really want your commander-in-chief to come and get you for war and find that you've gained 50 pounds and now you can't even go up a flight of steps without losing your breath. No, that would be humiliating. You would be, you would never want your commander to find you in that shape. Okay, I mean, Tim, you know what I'm saying. Would no, you want to be ready. You want a man. Oh yeah, let's go. Look, like Gone with the Wind. Come on, let's go, boys. You know, let's go kick them blank Yankees. Okay, you know what I'm saying. Okay, so no, you wouldn't want them to find you like that. So what we do today is really in preparation for tomorrow. Just like it was when you started preschool. It's really no different. So what about after he comes? Okay, so once he's come, then what? Well, has anybody ever been to a tribulation walk? Like at Halloween? Oh, nobody's been to those? Tim, you haven't gone to one?
Maybe it was called something else.
Yeah, I would think
Well, you know what I'm talking about, where they recreate the after the rapture, and it's during the tribulation, and so I can't think where there's one. There's always one somewhere about an hour from here, every Halloween. And anyway, if you haven't gone, you should go. Okay, the last time we went was when Jennifer's dad was still alive, and we took him.
like Judgment House.
Yeah, something like that.
Instead of a haunted house of Judgment
Yes,
House.
exactly. And we took him, and he was not saved. Okay, so it starts out, and you walk all through this labyrinth of other stuff, and the people are gone, and airplanes are crashed, and you know it's right after the rapture and all this kind of stuff. And so we get to the end of the very last scene that you get to is where you're at the judgment seat of Christ. Okay, and there's fire, and well, he's sitting at Jesus is sitting here judging. A saint comes up and you know, has to give an account for his life, and then Jesus said, you know, depart from me, I never knew you, and this door opens, and all these flames shoot out, and then the person is thrown into the flame. I mean, it is powerful, okay? And so, like I said, Jim was with us, and so when I looked, I kind of like, you know, was looking at the corner of my eye to see how he was going to, you know, take that, and it was quite sobering. It was more sobering to be there with somebody that I knew wasn't saved than just me being there. But and to be an observer. But this is what the Bible describes. And so, but see, we the bride. And it was sort of like, okay, see, I was more impacted being there with Jim, who wasn't a believer, than I was when I've been there many times by myself, because I am a believer. So yes, it was scary. Yes, I certainly don't want to be there, but it didn't have quite the same impact on me because I know I'm not going to be there, right? And so with the bride, see, we don't need to fear the judgment seat of Christ. Because once again, as believers, as the bride, we're not going to face this fiery eternity. And see, a lot of people misunderstand that. And they think that we'll all be at the judgment seat of Christ. No, the judgment seat of Christ is only for the people who rejected Christ. And they make that very clear when they act this out. And so, or, I lost my place. So see, it's, I'm so sorry, I lost my place. Okay, so what happens to the believer? Okay, well, the believer has a different judgment. Okay, so the unbeliever goes to the judgment seat of Christ. The believer only goes to the bema seat of Christ. Or maybe I should not word it that they only go, but rather that's where they are judged, at the bema seat of Christ. So the bema seat is where believers appear before Jesus and are acknowledged for what they did while they were waiting. And you're going to see how this plays out in the wedding scenario. So young people, listen to me. This should be at the forefront of your mind as you go about your daily business. Whether you're in college, whether you're working a job, I don't care what you're doing. The bema seat of Christ is where you, the bride, will give an account as to what you did with the time until he came. Now listen, I came from a family that was very much about education and money and success and all that kind of stuff, okay? And the funny thing is, all three of us, my brother, sister, none of us completed college, but we all did well. You know, God was just with us. But, you know, I just didn't like it, okay? I just didn't like it. But see, I don't even know why I said that now. But you're gonna give an account for what you did. And guess what? If you went to college and you got a doctorate and you're not saved, oh well, because that's not gonna help you. That was my point. It's not how much money you made. It's not whether you became Donald Trump or not. What matters is, did I love Jesus and did I do all I could do while I'm here to serve him? That's what matters. And it doesn't matter whether you go to college or you don't go to college, or nothing matters except for following Jesus and doing what he says. All right, and then I thought about it, okay, well, for the men after the battle, right, after you go through a battle, well, what do they do after the battle? Well, they review everything. They review how the battle went. You know, that's what, now I can't think of it, the college for the Army and stuff, I can't think of it. Anyway, you know, they study these battles. They study battles from eons ago. You know, this is why they go to college and these army colleges to study these battles and stuff and to become soldiers and stuff. And then what do they do after that? Okay, well then they find out who did a good job during the battle. And then what do? They give you medals. And then you go before the president. And then you get a medal because you did such a good job during that battle. And so this is like the Bema Seat of Christ. And it's not about works at all, though. It's about your faithfulness while you waited. What did you do with the time that you were waiting for your bridegroom to come or for your groom to come? What did you do with the time that you were waiting for the battle to start? Were you faithful to him while you waited? Now you know where I'm going with this. What about the woman who's not faithful? Well, it's taking too long. My hormones are raging. He sure is handsome. Look at those big muscles. What about the bride who messes around and doesn't wait for her groom to come? So if you did wait, you're going to go to the judgments. You're going to go to the Bema Seat of Christ, where he's going to reward you for waiting. Your husband is coming to you to take you as his bride, believing that you have been faithful. And then on those 7 days of your honeymoon, you're going to talk about what you did during those 7 days. You're going to talk about during those 7 days what you did while you were waiting. You're going to tell him what you made. Oh, look what I made. Look what I did. Look what, wow. You can just hear how we talk. You know, that's what you're going to do. And then what is he going to do? Oh, I love you so much. And then he's going to reward you. He's going to reward you with good things at the Bema Seat of Christ. So you see, we're already sealed with a dowry. He already paid the Father the price for us. And of course, I don't need to tell you, but just to make it clear, what did he pay for us with? His own blood.
Yes.
He paid the Father the dowry with his own blood. And then guess what? The father of the bride accepted it. See, he's our father too, and he accepted it. And so now he accepts that we are going to marry his son, right? And so in other words, you're literally sealed while you wait. Now that does not mean if I want to go whore around it, I can't do that, because I have a free will. But guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to spoil everything. The groom is not going to want me then. And can you blame him?
Right.
This starts shedding a whole lot of light on stuff, doesn't it? And so And so remember, betrothal was literally being married. It was being, you were literally, if you were betrothed, you were married without consummation. And so they took betrothal very seriously, okay, way more seriously than we take engagements. And Jesus and the Father takes our betrothal very seriously. And it's just like, I thought, okay, it's just like joining the military and waiting during that period of time that you have to wait before you're sworn in, waiting to go to boot camp. You're committed and you're patiently waiting for your ship-off date, and hopefully during that time, hopefully you're working out. Hopefully you're eating right. Hopefully you're preparing to go to boot camp, because they are not going to be easy on you. And if you're a sloth, you're going to have a really hard time if you even get through it. All right, so with this in mind, I like to think of the bema seat of Christ as being the time when, after Jesus comes for you, in that intimate moment of exhilaration, when that moment that finally comes, right? He finally comes for us, and then we intimately discuss, during those 7 days, we intimately discuss that time of what we were doing while we were apart. And then he rewards you. He rewards his bride for her faithfulness. And like a good husband, he showers his bride with diamonds and gifts and a house and crowns. That's what the Bible says, that he will get crowns. And then for you men, the king crowns you for your faithful service to him, and he rewards you with big old fancy medals that you can show off. See, the time of waiting may in fact determine what we do in our future marriage to Christ during the millennial reign and beyond. And that's described in Revelation 20, 4-6. And also in Matthew 25, 14, 13. See, we have a purpose. And we have jobs. And we have structure. And we have a real life. And you may very well use your real life talents in the new kingdom age. You are not going to be floating on a cloud. You're going to be working. It's going to be real life. So at the bema seat of Christ, after the rapture and the wedding, we are then presented to Christ as his glorious bride or his glorious servant or soldier. And for the men, like going before the president and getting the Medal of Honor. And yet in reality, that just pales in comparison, right? There's really no comparison. But this scenario, you can find it in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 14. And the pain of the waiting for the bridegroom to come is even addressed in verse 17. Listen to this. Because you know how painful it is to wait for anything, right? But especially something like that. It says, "For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." That's the waiting. He knows it's hard to wait. So you young people, what you're doing while you're waiting is very important. And he longs to come and find you, patiently waiting for him, working hard, keeping yourself set apart, not going whoring around, and looking forward to your future eternity in blissful service to him. So would a bridegroom want to show up and to take his bride away only to find that she had been unfaithful? Slothful. Okay, come on, Tim. You come get your bride and she's gained 100 pounds. Come on, tell the truth.
All right, we'd have to talk.
Oh, okay, we'd have a talk. Okay, so, or how about you come and you find her in sweatpants?
Well, I mean, that's just.
You're going to the wedding. You're not going to the justice of the peace. You're going to a 1,000-member wedding. You want her in sweatpants?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. All right, so see, it makes a difference what you do while you wait. So the bride should be busy, as should a good soldier be busy, preparing herself, her body, her things to take with her to decorate her new home. And just to be clear, this Bema Reward Day is not just for the soldiers and the brides in ministry. In other words, to those in ministry, it's not just to those people, it's to everybody. If you are a bride of Christ, you will be at the Bema seat of Christ. You will be there as a soldier of the Lord to receive your crown. So no matter what your occupation in life is, All right, that has no bearing on it. It's for all believers, every single one. So it's even for the slothful believer, okay? And now they won't get the same rewards as a diligent believer, but they're still a believer, so they're going to be rewarded for their faithfulness. So see, there again, see, you're not saved by your works. Okay, and just like the Proverbs 31 woman, she's a good wife. She continued to work hard for her husband and her family. See, work comes out of love. If you love somebody, then you work for them. You want to do it out of love, not out of duty. And that's what James was trying to get across to the church in the book of James, that Jesus saved us out of love. We accept his payment for sin out of love, and then we work for him out of reciprocal love for our groom, for our king. Or how about the parable of the talents? The parable of the talents that Jesus told. That, do you know that refers to the bema seat of Christ? It just dawned on me. Oh my gosh, that's about the bema seat. And the parable of the talents, you remember where and I taught on this not too long ago, where the master entrusted the servants with talents while he went away. And guess what? He gave one person 1 talent, he gave one person 2 talents, and or 5 or whatever it was. And so then what happened? When he came back, he said, "What did you do with the talents I left you with?" Okay, and then what happened? The one that had 5, he gave him more. And he said, "Oh my gosh, he doubled his money." And he said, he doubled the master's money. And so Jesus said, "Great, okay, you've done good. Welcome into the fellowship of the Lord. Welcome into heaven. Welcome into the new kingdom. Welcome into my fellowship." And he gave him more. And then the same with the second one. The third one hid his talent. And he didn't do anything with them. What did he say? Boy, this is serious. He said he banished him into everlasting judgment. Have you not read that and thought how harsh that was? Tell me you hadn't.
Yeah.
If you tell me you didn't think how harsh that was, you're lying.
Well, apparently he had given him instructions which we are
Yes.
privy to.
Yes.
And so he had violated those instructions. We just aren't told that part.
Right. I always read that there again because I read the Bible in judgment, not in grace. And so what he was saying was that parable is about the bema seat of Christ and the new kingdom to come. And it's saying, what did you do with the spiritual gifts that I gave you while I went to build you a house to bring you to me? That's what he's saying in that thing. What did you do for the commander-in-chief while you were waiting for the war to start? What did you do while you were waiting for the rapture? For me to come and get you and take you away. All right, so now let's look at after the bema seat.
Oh, wait a minute, I want to say
Okay.
something. When you were talking about like a soldier, I thought about, some soldiers would say, "No, I want to eat and be merry and not work hard."
Well, that's an idiot soldier.
Before I go to war. But then when he does that, right, because he's like, "I'm not going to be able to eat that way, I'm
Right.
not going to be able to do those things." And I think we do that.
Yeah.
Well, like
Well,
I'm
they're
gonna
idiots.
just, yeah. But it's gonna
We're
make-
idiots.
But it's gonna make it hard on you.
That's why we need Jesus.
Yeah, when you go.
Dereliction of duty.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're always supposed to be in a ready state.
Yeah,
If you're in the military, you're supposed to be ready at all times.
yeah.
And like I said, we never had a war going on, but we played war. We had drills, we acted like there was war, and all that kind of stuff. So we were always in a ready, state. And is that not what we're supposed to be?
Yeah.
And that wedding scenario just to me just brings it all home and just makes it come alive in my mind. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be ready. I'm not going to be in my pajamas when he comes. So what happens after the bema seat? Well, what comes after the bema seat of Christ is the culmination of all the ages, and that comes with the marriage. It comes with the ceremony. It comes with the marriage supper of the Lamb to his glorious bride, where they're going to live forever. And they're going to first live in their honeymoon period for 7 days, and then or 7 years, and then they're going to come out into the millennial reign period. So have you ever wondered why Jesus had no bride here on earth? This is why. This is fine. He has a bride. It's us. And he's waiting on us. And he went back to prepare a place for us at his Father's house. He was destined to marry the church.
Oh, why the man Jesus?
Yes, why the
never
man
had a
Jesus
bride.
did not have a bride. Because he, the man Jesus, is destined to marry the bride. He's destined to marry the church. So let's look at Ephesians 2:27. Are the puzzle pieces coming together?
Yes.
Ephesians 5:27.
5.
Uh-huh. That he might present it to himself a glorious church, or you could say a beautiful, glorious bride, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that I should be holy, and she should be holy, and without blemish. So in other words, he presents to himself the bride, without spot or wrinkle, and that's the church. And this reminds me of someone, as Jeff mentioned last night, who listened to a podcast recently, and oh my gosh, they went off the deep end, and now they've convinced themselves that Jesus' body was all marred and scarred, and, you know, he wasn't perfect, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not sure why that's important to this person. But see, the lambs that were slain were perfect. They weren't beaten up. If they had any marks, if they had any disease, if they had any growths, anything like that, then they could not be a sacrifice for sin. And so do you really think that Jesus wasn't perfect in his body? I think that he was. And if the animals had to be pure and perfect, and we just read where the church, he said a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing. So if the church couldn't have that, the animals couldn't have that, why do we think that his body, his physical body, would be all scarred and marred up? Then I don't see how he could have been the perfect sacrifice. Anyway, but, all right. And then let's talk about the trumpet. So the trumpet sounding for the bridegroom is likened to the groomsman announcing the arrival of the bridegroom. Are you starting to see all these correlations? All right, see, and you hopefully are going to see even weddings here in a whole different light now. Because in today's wedding, the groomman, like I said, walks down the aisle, and when you see their presence, that demonstrates that the groom, the bridegroom, is going to be coming right behind. Or take the tradition of the white wedding dress. Well, it's straight out of the Bible. Where do we get that from? We always think of purity, right? Wedding, virginity, purity. See, white is always referenced to righteousness and purity. So the reception or the supper that comes after the wedding. Now, I don't know how many of you are born in the South, but I didn't grow up where you went to a dinner. I never went to a wedding, well, supper, but I never went to a wedding that had a sit-down meal in my whole life. We didn't do that.
Light hors d'oeuvres.
We had hors d'oeuvres. We had cake and hors d'oeuvres and finger food. I never saw a wedding supper until I married Jeff, and we went to a wedding. We went to a Catholic wedding. Of course, I'd never been to anything Catholic. I didn't know anything about Catholics. And we went to a Catholic wedding, and they actually had a big sit-down supper, and I was like floored. I mean, like I'd never seen that before. But really, what we did as Southerners were wrong. That wasn't biblical. Because you're supposed to have a supper. All right? And so in Revelation 19, 7 through 8, let's look at that. And again, I hope this just takes, I hope you will never go to a wedding again and view it the same way that you did. So Revelation 19, 7 through 8. It says, let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him, for the marriage of the Lamb has come. See, the waiting is over. And his wife hath made herself ready. See, she prepared during that time of waiting, and she was expecting him. Verse 8, and to her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white. The wedding dress. Because she waited. She didn't whore around. For the fine linen is the righteousness of saints. Verse 9. And he saith unto me, Right, blessed are they which are called. Get that? You are called unto the marriage supper of the Lamb. You don't just show up. Tell me what wedding you just show up. What's that called? A wedding crasher. You don't just show up at the wedding if you're not invited. You're called. That's why we give out invitations. You're called. You're called unto the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said unto me, These are the true sayings of God. So again, this is so exciting because while the tribulation is going on earth, we are going to a wedding. My whole life I have focused on the tribulation. I've never focused on the wedding. So we, the believers who are saved by the blood of the Lamb, we are marrying our groom during the tribulation. And then he's going to come back. We're going to emerge back to the earth after our 7 days in our honeymoon or our 7 years to kick butt. And so we read it a minute ago in Revelation 9:18. He says, we emerge with our fine linen on, clean and white, our marriage garments on, and we return with Christ to the earth. So right after the rapture, we are somewhere in that, we don't know exactly when, but we are going to become the bride of Christ. Now let's look at Revelation 19:7. One more time. I already read it, but I want to say, let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him, for the marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife hath made herself ready. Now for the men, if this freaks you out, I don't think it made a lot of sense for Jesus to give two metaphors, although he did give a whole lot of parables, but for this grand event. And I think, space was limited as far as what they wrote down, and to satisfy the egos of the men, I think, we need to settle in on this one metaphor. But just in case it freaks you out, let's just think about how you love your wife. Okay, so just think about your great love for your wife and what you would do for her when you think about this metaphor. So don't let it freak you out, in other words. All right, so now let's look at the marriage supper. So Jesus had to have been from the South because, like Tim said, we don't eat dinner, we eat supper. Okay, so he had to have been from the South. All right, so it's called the marriage supper of the Lamb. Now, as I said, after the wedding, there's always a what? A reception. Okay, and have you ever wondered where all these wedding traditions come from? This is where they all come from. And like I said, we got it all wrong. And I don't know if all of us, Tim, well, you're a good bit younger than me, but did you grow up having wedding suppers or just finger foods?
In the reception, we'd have a meal.
You'd have a meal. How about you, Diana?
Fingers.
Okay, so it must be the age thing. So.
But I was in Florida.
Well, you're in Florida, but you're still in the South.
Yeah.
But a lot of, I don't know, Florida also had a northern influence.
Yeah, they did.
But that's more south.
Yeah.
Depending on what part of Florida.
Than
Yeah.
North Florida.
So anyway, we got it, where I'm from, we got it wrong. But anyway, but what do you do at the wedding? You invite your family and friends, right? And they come for the reception, but only if you're invited, right? And so I was reading about somebody who said that they got married and they invited everybody to the wedding, but they only invited certain people to the reception. Now, if I took my time to come to the wedding and you didn't invite me to the reception, I'm going to be a little ticked off. How about y'all? Okay, and so the person who announced the bride and groom, after the ceremony and said, okay, announced the reception, failed to say that it was only for those who were invited, which would have ticked everybody off. To me, I'm like, you better be glad the guy didn't do that. But so everybody came, and they had like 50 people extra that they didn't plan for. But see, you're supposed to be invited, right, to the wedding. And so lost my place again. So I was just gonna say, if I had been the wedding planner, I would say, no, we're not gonna do it that way. Either you invite only a few to the wedding and only a few to the reception, or we're not doing this, because that's gonna tick people off. But anyway, but this reception of the marriage supper of the Lamb is really a closed reception. And it's really for only those who are invited, and for only those who are in Christ, and only for those who are born again of spirit who will be invited. So right here, if you never thought about our traditions, this is where they all come from. And so after our wedding to Christ, and just FYI, Christ means Christos in Greek, and it means the anointed one. So Jesus is Yeshua, that's Hebrew, which means Yahweh is salvation. That's what Jesus means. And so he is calling you to the reception that God calls the marriage supper of the Lamb. And you have to have a formal invitation to come. And not just anyone can come. And if you do, well, you won't be able to, but we call that a wedding crasher. And so, can anyone tell me where this marriage supper of the Lamb or this reception supper is going to take place? Does anybody know?
In heaven.
On the new earth.
Okay, it doesn't matter what you said, because we don't know. So everybody's right, because it's not clear. But what is clear is the length of the tribulation. So isn't it amazing that God loves man enough to let him know exactly to the T, to the day, how long his wrath is going to be poured out on an unbelieving world, while we're being married to the bridegroom. And we've already covered this, that the bride and the groom will be together safely in their new home for 7 days or 7 years during that tribulation. But here's a fact, yes,
Well, that's also where our rewards are handed out, right?
we already went through that.
Okay.
Yeah, so, now, this is I know this is a little time consuming, but I do want to hit on this. This is so important, okay? So, you may not know this, but Daniel says the tribulation will be 1,290 days. But Revelation says it's going to be 1,260 days. So there's a discrepancy right there of 30 days that's not accounted for. Now hang with me, because we're going to do some math to figure out what's going on here. So I want to read Daniel chapter 12, verse 11 through 12. And I want to see what it says exactly. And so verse 11 says, "And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days." Verse 12, "Blessed is he that waiteth." What are you going to think from now on when you hear waiteth? What are you going to think? You're waiting for your bridegroom to come. Yeah. Okay. So okay. So blessed is he that waiteth and cometh. So listen. You have to show up. What if you don't show up? All right. Cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. 1,335 days. All right, so you waited, and then you have to cometh. Well, cometh to what? All right, so as for the numbers, so if you take the greater number, 1,335 in verse 11, and you take verse 12, 1,290, right? Did I type that wrong? Somebody got your Bible out? Yeah, okay, I got it mixed up. I was thinking that the greater number was, so the lesser number is in verse 11, the greater number is in verse 12. So you take verse 12, 1,335, and you subtract that from the lesser number in verse 11, it's 1,209. All right, so in verse 12, you're waiting and then you're coming, and so the days are different, right? So in these verses, there's 30 days missing, and then we're going to find another 45 days missing. Okay, in a minute, when we read Revelation. But but it says in verse 12, it said blessings to those that wait and those to come. Okay, so that those missing days are gonna have to do with waiting and coming. All right, so now let's look at Revelation where it tells us about that same event, and it tells us that the days. Revelation 11:3. It says, and I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days. So that's 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. Now, I personally believe these witnesses are Elijah and Enoch, because the Bible says that it's appointed unto every man once to die. Elijah never died, and neither did Enoch. So these 2 witnesses are going to come back. They're going to witness through the first half of the tribulation, and they're going to be killed, and then they're going to be resurrected from the dead. So that's why we believe that's who that is. All right, so now both of these scriptures are dealing with the same event. Revelation and Daniel, they go hand in glove. They're talking about the same event. They're talking about the tribulation. They're talking about God's wrath poured out on an evil world, all the while the bride and the groom are safe in the Father's house. I mean, have you ever thought of it like that? Like Jesus isn't down here on the earth during the tribulation. He's safe in the Father's house with his bride. And so we read when the Antichrist will come, and that's in Daniel 9:27. So let's read that. Daniel 9:27. And it says, and he, meaning the Antichrist, or in Revelation, the beast, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspending of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. All right, so in the phrase in the middle, we'll see where it said in the middle. Okay, in the midst of the week, that means in the middle. In the middle is where we get the 3.5 years and the 3.5 years of the tribulation. It's going to be 7 years, but it's 3.5 and 3.5. All right, so midway through the tribulation, the Antichrist or the beast will be putting into the sacrifices that are being done in the 3rd temple. That he's going to desecrate the temple. He's going to think that he's God, and then all literal hell is going to break loose after that. And but remember where the bride is.
And the bride has already been in heaven for 3.5 years at the middle.
Exactly, we already covered all that.
Yeah.
So I'm just stressing, he came in late, just so you'll know. Okay, so for the first half of the tribulation, from the signing of the covenant with Israel to this point of stopping the sacrifice in the temple is 3.5 years. Guess how long that is? 1,260 days. All right, so the second half of the tribulation is another 3.5 years, and that's 1,260 days for a total of 7 years. Okay, but watch this. So Revelation specifically mentions, as I've said, 1,260 days, which matches Daniel's prophecy. So to be clear, in the second half of the tribulation, the 3.5 years, the 1,260 days, the Antichrist, the beast, that he breaks the covenant with Israel and sets himself up in the 3rd temple, and he profanes the holy place. But we're going to see in a minute that we're going to have a gap. All right? I know this is kind of confusing. I'd had to go through it like 10 times to get it in my head. All right, and so, but to give you a little more information, have you watched the news about Trump and Gaza and how the commentators are saying that the Abrahams are going to strongly come into place in? And so there's talk about maybe the Palestinians and the Muslims in Iran will enjoy the peace that's going to come through those Abraham Accords, and how they're going to use those peace accords, and how they're going to leave Israel alone. That's what I'm hearing. Okay, well, we know that's not going to happen, right? Because we just read it in Daniel and Revelation. But if we understand just what Donald Trump is working towards, and he tells you every time you hear him talk, he wants to be known for peace. He wants to bring peace to the world, and he wants to be remembered as a peacemaker. He's always talking about his ability to bring peace. And I heard today that very soon that maybe this Israel. Russia-Ukraine thing is going to be over very soon. And then I saw him talking the other day on Tuesday to reporters, and they were talking to him, and King Abdullah from Jordan was one, when he was there. And Newsmax said something to this effect. They said, "We have never seen a president like this." And I thought about Hitler, and I thought, well, you know, we would have said that about Hitler. We've never seen, but really he was a despot, and we have. You know, but the world has had despots all through the ages. But see, Trump comes as a peacemaker,
So does the rider on the white horse.
and that's where I'm going with this. But see, it's going to be a very sad day if we don't recognize this and learn this and remember this. And but see. What I want us to do, I want us to know these facts, but I don't want us to focus on that because we're not going to be here.
Yeah.
Okay? And, okay, so, but back at the days. So, at the end of the 1,260 days, then the Antichrist is going to be defeated in battle known as Armageddon. That's when we come back with Jesus. We leave our honeymoon. We come back. We come out with blazing, and we destroy our husband's enemies. Who does not want to see your husband's enemies destroyed? I mean, come on, you know? And so we leave the Father's house, us the bride, and we defeat the Antichrist, and he defeats his enemies with the word of his mouth, and that will end the tribulation period. That will end God's wrath on an evil world. So with that said, in Daniel 12:11, when he mentions 1,290 days, as we've said, for the first half of the tribulation, which is, and I think I might have read it wrong before, so excuse me if I did. But so the first half of the tribulation is 1,290 days. The second half of the tribulation is 1,260 days. All right. So I said all that to ask you this. Keeping in mind that the wedding that has already taken place, and we're about to see the reception start. We're about to see the marriage supper of the Lamb start. We've come out of our new home. We've come out of we come out of the ceremony, and we've defeated our enemy with Christ. We have 30 extra days at the end of the tribulation that's really not accounted for. All right, and this is where I was going with that, because the Bible is amazing. So we have this 30 days, and then we have another 45 days that I'm going to tell you about that's unaccounted for. So really, after the tribulation, we have 75 days. So what I'm saying is, what in the world is going on after the tribulation in that 75 days? And it's got to do with the wedding. All right, so in the first 30 days, well, it's a theory, and we really don't know we really don't know for sure, but one theory they think is that Israel is absolutely going to be decimated, okay, during the tribulation, of course, which it will. And they're saying one theory is it'll need to be rebuilt within that 30 days. Now, I don't think that, but that was one thing I read. But to get to that 75-day number that we discussed before, we need to look at the remaining 45 days. So we have a set of 30 days, and we had a set of 45 days for a total of 75 days that Daniel does not give us any information about. And it's concerning those events after the tribulation, okay? But to reiterate, what do you do after a wedding? After the ceremony's done, what do you do?
Reception, you celebrate.
Well,
Reception.
You wait.
Oh, you wait for them to get.
Tell me you don't wait.
Yes.
Tell me you don't
yes,
wait.
yes.
And how long do you wait? A long time.
Take the pictures, do they take the pictures?
That's right. You wait for a long time. So this absolutely amazes me. Let's read it again. Daniel chapter 12, verse 12. Blessed is he that waiteth, and he that cometh. So you have to come and you have to wait, okay, to the 1,305 and 30 days. All right, so during that 30 days and during the 45 days, whenever something's going on that we don't know exactly what, we have to come
Yeah.
and we have to wait. All right, and he says those that do that will be blessed. So if you don't wait and you leave,
You don't get the cake.
you don't get the cake. You don't get all the fun. Okay, you won't be blessed. All right. So what this reminds me of is after the wedding, and all the guests they're waiting for the reception to begin, and you know how long it takes, and the pictures, and oh my gosh, and all the pictures, and the family, and the bigger the family, the longer you have to wait, and all that. And so I think this is a picture of the bridegroom in getting their pictures made while God is cleaning up the earth or whatever. So it seems to me that Daniel chapter 12:12 is saying that blessed is he, the person who waits during the 30 days and then cometh, possibly during the 45 days, to the reception, to the marriage supper of the Lamb, to the bride of his church, to the bride of the church.
It could be possible during that 75 days, that's where the angels are gathering the remnant of Israel as well as the nations to be judged. And those nations that are sheep nations will go on into the kingdom age. Those will be natural people. Those that were against Israel, well, they're cast into hell now.
Exactly, and I'll cover those people that are left. So Daniel is telling us, he's telling you, if you hang in there,
Yeah.
if you don't go whoring around, okay, if you hang in there and you wait and you show up, and so that's telling me that some people won't,
Yeah.
because he's saying if, and those who do will be blessed.
I don't think it's gonna be the saints. We've already been transformed.
Well, I'm talking about before we marry him, while we're waiting for the bridegroom to come.
Oh,
But,
okay,
yeah.
yeah.
And I know I may not have all this perfectly down, but I think it's enlightening, and I think it's makes us think. So I think what it's showing is that all this is going to be real. It's going to be real life. It's going to be a real wedding supper. It's going to be a real new heaven and a new earth. It's going to be a real new kingdom age. It's going to be a real working environment. It's going to be a real new family. You know what I'm saying? It's real.
That's real. Yeah.
It's not allegorical. It's real. It's something that's really going to happen. And so it's going to be a real wedding with a real celebration. And if you hang in there until after the 1,330 days, after the breaking of the treaty with Israel by the Antichrist, and you continue to hang in there for another 75 days after the tribulation ends, it says you will be blessed. That's what it says. So how will you be blessed? Well, you'll be blessed because 75 days after the tribulation period ends, guess what starts?
Millennial reign.
The millennial reign,
The kingdom age.
the kingdom age. And that's what the whole entire Bible is about. And I know I've kept y'all for a long time. Can you hang in there with me just a few more minutes so we can get through the millennial reign? 'Cause this is just so exciting. So let's talk about the judgment of the sheep and the goats. All right, so with this said, all this said, what could be going on in these total 75 days? Well, we mentioned some different things. And what Pastor Jeff mentioned, and possibly the rebuilding of Israel, possibly the judgment of the Gentile nations, which is in Matthew 25:31-34, the pastor mentioned. So this judgment is another judgment. We had the white throne judgment, we had the Bema Seat judgment, now we have the judgment of the
Well, not
sheep and the
white throne
goats.
judgment, that hadn't happened yet.
But I'm talking about, we talked about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so it's really hard when you come in the
All
middle.
right, I'm sorry.
So I want to read it to make sure we understand all these events and to understand which ones we're going to be there and which ones we're not. All right, so Matthew 25:31-34 says, "When the Son of Man shall come in his glory," remember, he's coming in his glory to the wedding, "and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, Ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. All right, so where did the Gentile nations fall on the agenda of Jesus during the tribulation? See, that determines their future. What stance they took against Jesus or for Jesus during the tribulation. And those who sided with Jesus during the tribulation, they survived. And they're called the sheep nations. And the goat nations came against Christ during the tribulation, so they'll be judged. So it's only the sheep nations that will enter into this new kingdom, the millennial reign that's ruled by our husband, Jesus Christ the King. So some believe that the marriage to Christ will take place in heaven between Christ and the church and all believers, but the reception or the marriage supper of the Lamb will not take place until the end of the tribulation. Now, we don't know for sure, but this is speculation. And so evidently there's 75 days interval, according to Daniel and Revelation, between the tribulation end and the beginning of the millennial reign, or what we know is the kingdom age. And during this period could be the reception, the marriage supper of the Lamb. So just to recap, if you're saved by the blood of the Lamb, then you're betrothed to the King. You're betrothed to Jesus. You're betrothed to your husband. You're awaiting for his return for you. And you're waiting, hopefully, patiently, and in good standing, so that he will come and not find you in your pajamas. And they know what I'm talking about. All right. And when he comes, then that trumpet will sound, the announcement will be made, the bridegroom has come, and will be whisked away on a litter of air to meet him there. And then once reunited in the Father's house, and I think it's during this time that we're going to be showered with gifts and rewards from the bema seat of Christ. But because the groom wants to lavish his bride with gifts because he loves her and she's been faithful to wait. And then you marry Christ in the wedding ceremony and you spend 7 years during the tribulation in perpetual bliss, getting to know your husband, getting to know him. And at the end of the 7 years, you're going to emerge to take a trip on a horse where you're going to witness the destruction of your husband's enemies, all at his mere word. And you're going to behold a new heaven and a new earth formed, possibly during that 75-day gap, we don't know, before the kingdom age. But I believe, and of course this is all speculation, but could this be a period of time of waiting between the wedding and the reception? That 75 days. Waiting for the bridegroom to enter the reception, to enter into the celebration, to enter the marriage supper of the Lamb in celebration with those who have waited. And for those who have shown up, who have come to celebrate with those who sided with the bride, sided with the groom during the tribulation. Those that aren't complaining about the wait perhaps, and those who love the bride and the groom and desire them more than anything to celebrate with them. Isn't this a beautiful picture?
It is.
So I think this is where we'll celebrate with the tribulation saints and all the marriage supper of the Lamb, at the marriage supper of the Lamb at the reception dinner. But the marriage supper, see, is only for the church. It's only for the bride and the groom and those who lived through the tribulation and those who sided with Christ, as well as the saints who died prior to the crucifixion. See, they're going to be invited. They're going to be a part of it. But they're just not the bride. But they're going to be there. And they're going to be celebrating with all of us. So this celebration is going to be a massive event. It's going to be people that are so happy for us all. And this could very well take place during this 75 days before that kingdom age starts. And before the bride and groom enter their new kingdom and their new life together for the 1,000-year blissful reign.
Are you
Yes.
done?
No?
Because it's got me thinking that the wedding guests are just that, they're guests. They're invited to the wedding. They're
It
invited
says
to
they
the
had to
wedding
wait and they had to
reception.
come.
But they're not the bride and the groom.
No.
So what I'm thinking is, again, it's those people that maybe never even heard the gospel during the tribulation. or they did, and they weren't all martyred. Or they're natural people that were born right before the tribulation.
Yeah, I think anybody who sided with Christ will be there.
Yeah.
But the waiting, I think, is
Part
the
of the
people.
yes, I think you brought out a good point,
Yes.
is also the Old Testament saints.
That's right,
Because they're not
because
part of
they've
the church.
waited. They've waited.
Yeah.
They've
They're not
waited
part
all
of the
these
church.
years. They've waited 2,000 years from, or whatever, since Christ's crucifixion. So they've been waiting and they've come. So see, it's all those extra people that they're not gonna get left out.
It'll make up the remnant of Israel. That would be
Exactly.
yes.
So in closing, I hope this excites you as it did me. And I hope that from now on, you're gonna look at the end times different.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, I'm not gonna look at it the same way. And we are, you know, we're so used to hearing the dark side. We're so used to hearing what's gonna happen and all the ugliness and everything. And all along, there's this glorious,
For us.
no! And we have this glorious future and that awaits us. And that's why I said, let's dare to look at the future. And this study has just been such an eye-opener for me. And it's made me view the end times from a different vantage point, from the bride. I've been looking at it from the center. I don't need to look at it that way. I need to know about that, but I don't need to focus on that because I'm the bride. And for the men, again, just think about it as a king, and you're the servant, or you're the soldier, and he's your great commander, whatever you feel comfortable with. But whatever the metaphor, it really doesn't matter, as long as you just get the reality of what he's trying to tell us here. And it's all a metaphor, I think, that we can understand.
Yeah, because I was just thinking with the bride, what if she was becoming a bride, but she didn't feel worthy to be the bride?
Oh, that'd be
Like
so
if she was gonna
sad.
marry this man she loved, but
How sad would that be?
that
Would he
be a
want her
pretty
like
sad
that?
ceremony.
Would he want her like that?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
Well, see, just as in the natural, a husband and wife, they come together sexually, they become one flesh, but it's, the deeper bond is even spiritual. It's spiritual, it's deeper than just coming together. So, what's the Bible say? We're his body. So we're one with Christ, the man, in that sense. We're his body, he's the head. And I think that's one reason he uses that marriage thing.
And that's why we need to teach young people why not to have sex before marriage, because it is spiritual. It does do something to you. It
Yes.
will ruin your life.
Yeah.
It's not just a physical act.
No.
And it goes back to all this teaching right here.
Yeah.
It has grave significance that will affect you for the rest of your life. So I think it's a metaphor that Jesus gave that we can all understand, men and women, we can all relate to it. 2,000 years later, we are still celebrating human love between a man and a woman and enjoying the biblical traditions that were established thousands of years ago. We still do the same traditions. Sure, they've changed up a little bit, but they're basically the same. And no wonder homosexuality is appalling to God. And no wonder God hates it, or it flies because it flies in the face of all creation. And we see this, we see all this through this time-honored tradition of a wedding between a man and a woman. And it simply does not fit the plan of God unless it is a man and a woman.
No.
But for those that are not saved, or they're caught up in whatever, there's hope. You just turn to the bride, turn to the groom, and just let him save you, let him clean. He says he gives her the white robes of righteousness. And let the Holy Spirit enlighten you, and let him give you understanding, and let Jesus empower you to get you out of anything that you're in that you shouldn't be. So with that out of the way, I just hope you'll never see the tribulation in the same light again. And I hope that you'll think of Jesus from this day forward as your groom, as your faithful commander that you're so dedicated to. And it's such a beautiful description of loyalty, respect, devotion, and a love that will last forever. And I dare you to look forward to the hope that lies before you and the hope that lies within you, because it's indeed a grand hope and a grand future.
Amen.
So blessings, and thank you for coming. And I'll see you the 4th Thursday in February. Mark your calendars on the 2nd and 4th Thursday of every month, and I'll see you next time. And thanks for hanging in there with me.